The rain came down like nails against the window of my third-floor walk-up, each drop a sharp percussion that matched the rhythm of my sewing machine. I'd been working for 6 hours straight, squinting under the single good lamp in my apartment, trying to finish Mrs. Rothstein's alterations before her daughter's bat mitzvah tomorrow. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. My fingers ached. My back screamed. The clock on my microwave, the only clock that still worked, read 11:47 p.m. Just a few more inches of hem, I told myself. Just finish this. Get paid. Maybe make rent this month. The pounding started so suddenly I stabbed myself with the needle. Fuck, I hissed, watching a bead of blood well up on my index finger. I stuck it in my mouth, annoyed, as the pounding came again. Harder this time, more insistent, not knocking, pounding. The kind of desperate sound that means someone's either running from something or about to break down your door. I stood slowly, my heart suddenly hammering to match the rhythm at my door. Through the peephole, I could see a shape. Tall, broad-shouldered, swaying. Please. The voice came muffled through the cheap wood. Please, I need. The shape collapsed against the door with a heavy thud that shook the frame. Every instinct I had screamed at me to call 911, to leave him out there, to not get involved. I lived in Chinatown, 3 blocks from Little Italy, in the kind of building where people minded their own business because not minding your business got you killed. But I'd heard that voice, the desperation in it, the pain, and I'd been taught better than to ignore someone bleeding on my doorstep. I opened the door. The man nearly fell into me. I caught him barely, my 115 pounds, no match for his weight. He had to be 6'2", maybe more, built like he spent his life in a gym. Blood soaked through a white dress, a shirt that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His jacket was torn, expensive Italian wool ruined by whatever violence had found him tonight. Inside, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. Come on, move. He stumbled forward, one hand pressed against his left shoulder where crimson bloomed like a grotesque flower. His other hand caught the edge of my work table, knuckles white with effort, sending Mrs. Rothstein's dress sliding to the floor. Up close, I could see the details my panic had missed. Olive skin gone pale with blood loss. Dark hair, wet from rain and sweat, falling across a face that belonged on a Roman statue, all strong angles and aristocratic lines. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping beneath the skin. And his eyes. When they met mine, I felt the impact like a physical blow. Ice blue, startling against his dark coloring. The kind of eyes that saw everything, that calculated and assessed and judged. Even through the haze of pain, they were sharp, intelligent, dangerous. Sit, I ordered, my voice coming out surprisingly firm. I cleared the chair by my work table with one sweep of my arm, sending fabric samples cascading to the floor. Sit down before you pass out. He collapsed into the chair, and I saw him properly for the first time. The shirt wasn't just expensive, it was custom-made, monogrammed on the cuff with initials I couldn't quite make out through the blood. The pants were tailored to perfection despite being splattered with mud and gore. Even his shoes screamed money, Italian leather destroyed by whatever hell he'd walked through to reach my door. What happened? I moved to my bathroom, grabbing the first aid kit I kept under the sink. It was barely stocked some bandages, antiseptic, pain medication, but it was something. Bullet. His voice was rough, accented with something I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. Or further south. Through and through, I think. I froze, my hands on the first aid kit. You think? Hard to check when you're running. Those ice blue eyes found mine again. You're not calling the police. It wasn't a question. It was a command, delivered with the kind of absolute authority that made it clear he was used to being obeyed. I should have called them anyway. Should have told him to get out, to bleed somewhere else, to take his violence and his danger and his criminal life away from my tiny apartment and my tiny life. Instead, I heard myself say, I need to see the wound. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or approval. He reached up with his good hand and started unbuttoning his shirt. The movement was awkward, painful, and after watching him struggle with the third button, I stepped forward. Let me. His hand caught my wrist before I could touch the fabric. His grip was iron, his fingers easily encircling my wrist completely. The contact sent an electric jolt up my arm that had nothing to do with fear. Or at least, not Entirely. "What's your name?" he asked, still holding my wrist. His skin was burning hot, fever bright. "Maya." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Maya Chen. Maya Chen." He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting each syllable. His thumb pressed against my pulse point, and I knew he could feel how fast my heart was racing. "You're not afraid." I met his gaze directly. "I didn't say that." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It transformed his face, softening the harsh predator's lines into something almost human, almost gentle. He released my wrist. I finished unbuttoning his shirt with shaking hands, carefully peeling back the fabric where blood had started to dry and stick to his skin. The wound beneath made my breath catch. Entry point in the front, just below his left shoulder. Exit wound in the back. The bullet had gone clean through, missing bone and major vessels by what looked like millimeters. Lucky. Impossibly lucky. But the wound was still serious, still bleeding, sluggishly, still in desperate need of treatment I had no idea how to provide. "This needs a hospital," I said, reaching for the antiseptic. "You need a doctor, surgeons, proper. No hospitals." His voice was flat. "Final. No doctors. No police. Can you help me or not?" I stared at the wound, at the blood still seeping from torn flesh, at this man who'd stumbled into my life trailing violence behind him like a cloak. "I'm a seamstress," I said quietly. "Not a doctor, not a nurse. I sew dresses, not people. But you can stitch." Our eyes met again. In his gaze, I saw understanding. He knew what he was asking, knew the position he was putting me in, and he was asking anyway, because he had no other choice. Because men like him, men with bullet wounds and expensive clothes and ice blue eyes that calculated death, didn't have the luxury of hospitals and police reports. I thought of the rent notice taped to my door. 3 months overdue. The eviction warning that would come next week, if I didn't pay. I thought of my grandmother in the nursing home across town, the care facility that kept calling about her declining health and my declining bank account. I thought of David, my fiancé, who died 18 months ago, and taken all my carefully laid plans with him. David, who'd been a surgical resident. David, whose medical kit I'd kept when I couldn't bear to throw anything of his away. "I have supplies," I heard myself say, "from my fiancé. He was a doctor. Was? Car accident. Drunk driver. He died before. I cut myself off. This stranger didn't need my trauma. The point is, I have surgical tools. Thread. Some antibiotics, maybe. But I've never done anything like this before." He leaned back in the chair, his face going even paler. Then we learned together. I retrieved David's medical kit from the back of my closet, where it had sat untouched for 18 months. My hands trembled as I opened it, seeing the instruments I'd watched him use countless times. During his residency, back when I'd visit him at the hospital and we'd grab midnight coffee in the cafeteria. Back when I'd believed in futures and forevers. "I need to clean the wound first," I said, forcing myself into a clinical mindset I didn't possess. "This is going to hurt. Everything already hurts." His eyes tracked my movements with that same unsettling intensity. "What's a little more?" I soaked gauze in antiseptic and pressed it to the entry wound. He hissed through his teeth but didn't pull away, didn't flinch, didn't cry out. Just sat there, jaw clenched, breathing carefully through his nose. "What's your name?" I asked, trying to distract him as I worked. "Seems fair since you know mine." A pause. Long enough that I thought he might not answer. "Dante," he said finally. "Dante Moretti. Italian, then." The accent made sense now. "Well, Dante Moretti, I need to close these wounds, and I don't have any anesthetic stronger than vodka. Vodka works." I retrieved the bottle I kept for emergencies, which this definitely qualified as, and handed it to him. He took a long pull, then another, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. When he lowered the bottle, his eyes had gone slightly unfocused, but that predatory sharpness remained underneath. "Do it," he said. I threaded one of David's curved surgical needles, my hands steadier now that I had a task, a purpose. But the surgical thread in the kit was old, possibly degraded. I couldn't trust it for something this serious. My eyes fell on my work table, on the dress I'd been hemming for Mrs. Rothstein, on the white silk folded carefully in the corner. My wedding dress. The one I'd never finished after David died, the one I'd been working on in stolen moments, unable to complete it, unable to throw it away. The silk was strong, medical grade strong. I'd chosen it specifically because I'd wanted a dress that would last forever, that I could pass down someday to a daughter I'd never have. Before I could second-guess myself, I grabbed the fabric and began cutting away a long strip from the bottom panel. The sound of shearing silk seemed impossibly loud in the quiet apartment. Dante's eyes tracked the movement. "What is that?" "My wedding dress." I threaded the silk through the needle, testing the strength. Perfect. It was supposed to be. His gaze moved from the silk to my face, and something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like recognition, like grief. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Don't be sorry yet." I positioned the needle above his wound. "I've never done this before. I might be about to turn you into a very expensive pincushion." That ghost smile again. "I've survived worse." I took a breath, thought of every nature documentary I'd ever seen about suturing, every episode of medical dramas I'd watched with David, every hem and seam and delicate embroidery stitch I'd ever sewn. Then I pressed the needle into his skin. Dante's sharp intake of breath was the only indication of pain. Otherwise, he sat perfectly still, a living statue carved from marble and blood. I worked slowly, carefully, trying to remember everything I'd seen David do during his rotations. Each stitch had to be precise, pulling the torn edges of flesh together without creating too much tension. The white silk thread turned pink as it passed through his skin, absorbing blood, becoming part of him. "You have steady hands," Dante observed after I'd completed several sutures. His voice was strained but controlled. "How long have you been a seamstress?" "Since I was 8. I tied off another stitch, moving to the next section. My mother taught me before she died. She and my father ran a restaurant in Chinatown. There was a fire. I'm sorry. Long time ago. I focused on the wound, not on the memories. I put myself through fashion school doing alterations. Met David my senior year. He was in medical school across the street. He would be proud of you." The unexpected kindness of the statement made my hands falter for just a second. I blinked back the sudden burning in my eyes. He'd probably tell me I'm doing this completely wrong. I managed. "You're keeping me alive. That's not wrong." I finished the entry wound and moved to examine his back. The exit wound was larger, messier, but clean. The bullet really had gone straight through. "This will be harder," I warned. "More stitches." "Then I should tell you." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "There are men looking for me. Men who would hurt anyone they found helping me." My hand stilled on his shoulder. "The ones who shot you." "Yes, and you came here anyway. Put me in danger anyway. I had nowhere else to go." His voice dropped, raw with something that might have been shame. "I should have kept running. Should have bled out in an alley somewhere. But I saw your light on, and He broke off. "I wanted to live." The honesty in those words struck something deep in my chest. I thought of the last 18 months, of going through the motions of living without really being alive, of sewing other people's wedding dresses and party dresses and celebration dresses while my own life remained frozen in grief. "Turn around," I said quietly. "Let me finish this." He shifted carefully, giving me access to his back. The exit wound gaped open, ragged edges that would require at least 15 stitches to close properly. I went back to work, the white silk thread weaving in and out of his skin like I was embroidering something precious. In a way, I supposed I was, embroidering life back into damaged flesh. We didn't speak as I worked. The only sounds were the rain against the window, the tick of the microwave clock, his carefully controlled breathing, and the soft whisper of silk through skin. When I finally tied off the last stitch, my hands were cramping and my back was screaming, but the wounds were closed, the bleeding stopped. The white silk stitches and stood out starkly against his olive skin, a roadmap of violence and survival. "Done," I said, reaching for the bandages. "I need to cover these and you need antibiotics. I have some left over from..." I caught myself. "I have some. Thank you." His voice was rough with exhaustion. Chen, I owe you my life. You don't owe me anything." I began taping gauze over the stitched wounds. "Just promise me those men won't come looking here." He was silent for too long. "Dante." I moved around to face him, and what I saw in his expression made my blood run cold. "Dante, promise me they won't come here." "I can't promise that." The admission hung in the air between us like a death sentence. "Then you need to leave." I stepped back, suddenly aware of how small my apartment was, how vulnerable I was with this stranger and his violence. Right now, before anyone sees you here, I can't leave yet. He tried to stand, swayed dangerously. I caught him by instinct, his weight pulling me against his chest. I need a few hours. Let the antibiotics work. Let my men. Your men? They'll come for me at dawn. Just a few hours, Maya. That's all I need. I should have refused. Should have pushed him out the door and scrubbed every trace of blood from my apartment and pretended this night had never happened. Instead, I found myself guiding him to my bed, the only bed in my studio apartment, and helping him lie down. A few hours, I said firmly. Then you're gone. A few hours, he agreed, his eyes already closing. I gave him the antibiotics with water, watched him swallow the pills with the trust of a man used to taking calculated risks. Then I retreated to my work table, to Mrs. Rothstein's dress, and the mountain of alterations that still needed finishing. My hands shook as I picked up the needle. On my bed, Dante Moretti slept the sleep of the wounded and dangerous, and on my work table, a strip of white silk from my wedding dress sat stained with his blood, drying, slowly in the lamplight. I looked at it for a long time, this piece of my past that had somehow become part of a stranger's present. Then I picked up Mrs. Rothstein's dress and went back to work, pretending my life hadn't just irreversibly changed, pretending I couldn't feel the weight of his presence in my apartment like a loaded gun, pretending I didn't keep glancing at the bed, checking to make sure he was still breathing. The rain continued its percussion against the window. The clock ticked forward. And somewhere in the pre-dawn darkness, men with guns were hunting for the man sleeping in my bed, stitched together with fragments of the wedding dress I'd never worn. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt more alive than I had in 18 months. I must have dozed off at some point because I jerked awake to the sound of my phone buzzing. The sky outside had lightened to that particular gray that comes just before dawn. My neck ached from falling asleep hunched over my work table, and for a moment, I couldn't remember why I felt so anxious. Then I saw the bed, empty. The sheets were rumpled, marked with faint traces of blood, but Dante was gone. My heart lurched. I spun around, checking the small bathroom, the kitchenette, the corners of my studio apartment that offered nowhere to hide. Gone. He was gone. Relief and something that felt disturbingly like disappointment warred in my chest. This was good. This was what I'd wanted. Him leaving meant the danger left with him, meant I could go back to my normal life, meant a sharp knock at the door made me jump. Through the peephole, I saw two men in expensive suits. The kind of suits that cost more than everything in my apartment combined. They stood with the careful stillness of people trained in violence, hands clasped in front of them, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses despite the early hour. Every instinct screamed at me not to open that door. I opened it anyway. The taller of the two men spoke first. Miss Chen, my name is Marco Bassani. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Moretti. His English was perfect, accent barely noticeable, but his presence filled the doorway like a wall. Behind him, the second man remained silent, watching the hallway with the vigilance of a trained guard. I don't know what you're talking about. My voice came out steadier than I felt. I think you have the wrong apartment. We have the right apartment. Marco's expression didn't change, but something in his tone suggested he was used to being believed. Mr. Moretti wishes to thank you personally for your assistance last night. May we come in? It wasn't really a question. I stepped aside, and they entered my small apartment with the careful assessment of men cataloging exits and threats. The silent one, shorter but broader through the shoulders, moved to the window, checking the fire escape while Marco's gaze swept over my work table, the blood-stained sheets on my bed, the strip of white silk still sitting where I'd left it. Where is he? I asked, crossing my arms over my chest. Dante, Mr. Moretti is secure. Marco turned back to me. He asked me to deliver his gratitude and to offer compensation for your time and discretion. He reached into his jacket. I tensed and withdrew a thick envelope, setting it on my work table next to Mrs. Rothstein's half-finished dress. I don't want money, I said, though I could see the edges of $100 bills peeking from the envelope. A lot of $100 bills. Nevertheless, Mr. Moretti insists. Marco gestured to my apartment. He's also arranged for this building's security to be upgraded. You'll notice new locks on your door by this afternoon. The building owner has been informed this is at your request. I never requested. You did now. Marco's tone was polite but immovable. Mr. Moretti protects those who help him. Consider it a courtesy. The other man muttered something in Italian from his position by the window. Marco responded in the same language, sharp and quick. Then he turned back to me. There's one more matter. He withdrew his phone, showing me a photo. It was Dante. Taken in better circumstances, a formal event. Maybe a wedding or gala. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin, standing next to a beautiful woman in an elegant gown. Have you seen anyone watching your building? Anyone asking questions about Mr. Moretti or about last night? No. I looked more closely at the photo. The woman had her hand on Dante's arm, smiling at the camera with the easy confidence of someone used to luxury. Who is she? Mr. Moretti's sister. Sophia. Marco pocketed the phone. The men who shot Mr. Moretti are from a rival organization. They may try to use anyone connected to him as leverage. If you see anything unusual, anyone watching you, following you, asking questions, you call this number immediately. He handed me a business card, plain white, just a phone number in black print. No name. I'm not connected to him, I protested. He showed up bleeding. I helped. That's all. That's enough. Marco's expression softened slightly. In our world, Miss Chen, small mercies create large debts. Mr. Moretti takes his debts seriously. The way he said our world made it clear exactly what world he meant. The kind of world where men got shot and couldn't go to hospitals. The kind of world where showing mercy could paint a target on your back. I don't want to be in his world. I picked up the envelope, tried to hand it back to Marco. I don't want the money or the new locks or the protection. I just want my life back. Marco didn't take the envelope. With respect, Miss Chen, that's no longer entirely your choice. You saved Mr. Moretti's life. That creates a connection whether you want it or not. Then break the connection. Tell him we're even. Tell him to forget I exist. I'll convey your wishes. Marco moved toward the door, the silent guard falling in behind him. But Mr. Moretti is not a man who forgets, especially not someone who saved him when no one else could. He paused at the threshold. The money in that envelope should cover approximately 6 months of rent at this address, plus some extra for supplies. Use it or don't, but know that more will come if you need it. You have Mr. Moretti's protection now. That's not a burden to be refused lightly. Then they were gone, disappearing down the stairwell as silently as they'd arrived. I stood in my apartment, holding an envelope of cash I hadn't earned, staring at a business card with a phone number that connected me to a world I didn't want any part of. The white silk strip caught my eye, still stained with Dante's blood, still carrying the dreams of a wedding that would never happen. I picked it up carefully, meaning to throw it away, to sever this last connection to a dangerous man who'd stumbled into my life for one night. Instead, I found myself folding it carefully and tucking it into my sewing box, next to the other scraps and remnants of projects past. Just a reminder, I told myself. A reminder to be more careful, to keep my door locked, to not let strangers bleed on my floor. Not a keepsake. Definitely not a keepsake. My phone buzzed again. Mrs. Rothstein, asking about her daughter's dress. I looked at the unfinished hem, at the mountain of alterations still waiting, at my normal life demanding my attention. Then I looked at the envelope of money, at the business card, at the strip of white silk stained with blood and promises I hadn't made. Outside, the sun was rising over Chinatown, painting my studio apartment in shades of gold and amber. Inside, I was beginning to realize that some stains don't wash out, and some debts can't be paid with money alone. 3 days passed. 3 days of jumping at every sound in the hallway, of checking the new locks. Marco's men had installed heavy-duty deadbolts that looked like they belonged on a bank vault, of finding excuses to walk past my window and scan the street below for men in expensive suits. 3 days of not touching the envelope of money that sat on my work table like an accusation. 3 days of telling myself I was relieved he hadn't come back. I was lying. Mrs. Rothstein had picked up her daughter's dress, gushing about how beautiful the alterations were, pressing an extra 20 into my hand like it was a fortune. I'd smiled and thanked her and pretended the envelope on my table didn't contain more money than I'd make in 6 months of hemming dresses. I'd called the nursing home about my grandmother. They'd been professional, kind, and clear. Her care was becoming more expensive as her dementia progressed. They needed to discuss payment plans. Soon. I'd stared at that envelope for a long time after that call. I still hadn't touched it. On the fourth morning, I woke to find a black car parked across the street from my building. Sleek, expensive, tinted windows that reflected the bracted white morning sun like mirrors. It hadn't been there when I'd gone to bed. I watched it from my window as I drank terrible coffee and tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just a car. Plenty of cars on this street. Except this one had a driver. I could see his silhouette through the windshield. Perfectly still, perfectly patient, waiting. By noon, the car was still there. By evening, I'd worked myself into a state of anxious anger that had me pacing my small apartment like a caged animal. If Dante Moretti thought he could just park his men outside my building, could just insert himself into my life without permission, The knock on my door was soft, polite, nothing like the desperate pounding from 4 nights ago. I looked through the peephole and my breath caught. Dante stood in my hallway, looking nothing like the bleeding, desperate man who'd collapsed into my apartment. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, his dark hair combed back from his face, his posture, straight and commanding. The only sign of his injury was the careful way he held his left arm, slightly away from his body, and his eyes. Those ice blue eyes that found the peephole like he knew exactly where I was looking. "Maya," his voice came muffled through the door. "Please. I only want to talk." I should have left him out there. Should have called through the door that we had nothing to discuss, that he should take his money and his protection and his dangerous world somewhere else. I opened the door. He looked better than he had any right to. The pallor was gone from his skin, replaced by healthy color. The lines of pain around his mouth had eased. He looked like what he was, a wealthy, powerful man in his prime, except for the way his eyes softened when he saw me. "You're healing well," I said, because it was safer than any of the other things I wanted to say. "Thanks to you." He glanced past me into the apartment. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, and he entered my space, and with the same careful assessment Marco had shown. But where Marco had been cataloging threats, Dante seemed to be learning me, taking in the half-finished dresses on my work table, the sketches pinned to my walls, the organized chaos of fabric and thread that defined my life. His gaze landed on the strip of white silk in my sewing box. I'd left it visible, unable to fully hide it away. "You kept it," he said quietly. "I keep all my fabric scraps." The lie came easily. "Waste not, want not." A slight smile touched his lips, like he knew exactly what I was doing. He moved to my work table, his fingers brushing over one of my sketches, an evening gown design I'd been working on for months, all flowing lines and delicate beadwork. "You're talented," he said. "These designs, they're remarkable. They're dreams." I crossed my arms, defensive. "I do alterations. I hem dresses for other people's daughters to wear to their bat mitzvahs. The designs are just something I do when I can't sleep." "Why?" The simple question caught me off guard. "Why what? Why only alterations? Why not your own designs, your own label?" He turned to face me fully. "With talent like this, you should be showing at Fashion Week, not hemming other people's dresses in a walk-up apartment." Heat flooded my cheeks. "Fashion Week, right. Do you have any idea how much capital it takes to start a label? How many connections you need? How many—" I cut myself off. "Why are you here, Dante?" He reached into his jacket. I tensed again, hating that he made me nervous, and withdrew a folder. Expensive leather, embossed with a logo I didn't recognize. "I'm here to offer you a job." I stared at the folder. A job. My family owns several legitimate businesses. One of them is Casa Moretti, a fashion house in Midtown. He set the folder on my work table. "We need a designer. Someone with fresh vision, raw talent. Someone who can bring something new to our next collection. You own a fashion house." My voice came out flat with disbelief. "Among other things." That slight smile again. "I have many interests, Maya. Not all of them are as dark as you might imagine." I picked up the folder with shaking hands, flipping it open. Inside were photographs of a stunning facility, open studios flooded with natural light, cutting-edge equipment, racks of high-end fabrics. A contract with terms that made my eyes widen. Salary, benefits, creative control. It was everything I'd dreamed of since fashion school. It was too good to be true. "Why?" I set the folder down, stepping back. "Why me? You could have any designer in the city. People with actual experience, with portfolios, because you saved my life with a wedding dress you'll never wear." His voice dropped, intimate. Because you have steady hands and a good heart. Because when I was bleeding on your floor, you didn't see a criminal or a monster. You saw someone who needed help. That doesn't qualify me to design for a fashion house. Your talent qualifies you. The rest is just, he gestured vaguely, circumstances that brought you to my attention. I looked at the contract again, at the salary that would cover my grandmother's care with plenty left over, at the studio space, the resources, the chance to actually create instead of just mending other people's creations. What's the catch? I asked quietly. Dante was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight I couldn't quite interpret. The men who shot me are still looking. They know someone treated my wounds. They found traces at the scene where I was hit. They're checking hospitals, clinics, anyone who might have helped me. My stomach dropped. They're looking for me. They're looking for whoever saved me. They don't know it's you yet. He moved closer, and I found myself frozen, unable to step back. But they will. Eventually. They're thorough, and they're patient. So this job, this is what? Witness protection? This is protection, yes. But it's also real. His hand came up to touch one of my sketches, gentle, almost reverent. Casa Moretti needs a designer. You need resources and safety. We help each other by having me work at your fashion house, where your people can watch me, where my people can protect you. He turned to face me fully. The Calabrese family, the ones hunting me, they're not like my organization. We have rules, codes. They have profit margins and body counts. The casual way he said it sent ice through my veins. Your organization. Yes, your mafia. I'd suspected it, known it really, but hearing him acknowledge it was different. I'm a businessman with complicated associations. That slight smile again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. But if you want the simple truth, yes. My family has been part of La Cosa Nostra for 4 generations. I'm what they call an underboss, second in command. Jesus Christ. I sank into my work chair, legs suddenly weak. You're actual mafia, like Godfather mafia. The movies get some things right, most things wrong. He pulled over my second chair, the one I used for clients, and sat across from me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker. I won't lie to you, Maya. My world is dangerous. It's built on violence and power and control. But it's also built on loyalty, on protecting our own, on rules that matter. Rules like not going to hospitals when you're shot. Rules like not involving civilians. Not hurting women or children. Not dealing in drugs or human trafficking. His voice hardened. Rules the Calabrese family doesn't share. I thought of the envelope on my table, of the new locks on my door, of the car that had been parked outside all day, watching, protecting. How long? I asked. How long would I need to work at Casa Moretti? Until the threat passes. Until I've dealt with the Calabrese situation. He leaned forward slightly. Could be months. Could be longer. But Maya, understand this isn't just about protection. I'm offering you a real opportunity. Your designs, your vision, on a real runway. Fashion Week is in 8 weeks. Our current designer just left to work for Versace. We need someone who can create a collection from scratch, something bold enough to make the industry notice. 8 weeks. I laughed, slightly hysterical. You want me to design an entire collection in 8 weeks while hiding from mafia assassins? Yes. The simple certainty in his voice should have been terrifying. Instead, I found myself considering it. Actually considering it. What happened to her? I asked suddenly. The woman in the photo Marco showed me. Your fiancé. Dante's expression shuddered, ice sliding behind his eyes. That's not relevant. It is to me. If I'm supposed to trust you, to put my life in your hands, I need to know. What happened to her? A long silence. So long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, her name was Isabella. We were engaged for 2 years. His voice was carefully neutral, but I could hear the pain underneath. The Calabrese family killed her 5 years ago. Car bomb meant for me. She was running an errand in my car, wearing my jacket because it was raining, they thought. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. I'm sorry, I whispered. I still wear her ring. He reached into his shirt, pulling out a delicate chain. A diamond engagement ring hung from it, catching the light. Can't seem to take it off. Understanding crashed over me. I reached for my own chain, the one I wore hidden under my clothes, pulling out the simple gold band that had been David's. Car accident, I said quietly. 18 months ago. He was on his way to the hospital for a shift. Drunk driver ran a red light. Dante's eyes fixed on the ring, then rose to meet mine. In that moment, something passed between us, recognition, understanding, the peculiar kinship of two people who'd lost their futures to violence and chance. The wedding dress, he said. You were making it for him. I couldn't finish it after he died. Couldn't throw it away either. I touched the ring, warm from my skin. So it just sat there, half done. A monument to everything that didn't happen. And then you used it to save me. I used it because it was strong silk and I didn't have anything else. But we both knew that wasn't entirely true. Dante stood, moving to the window. The black car was still there, waiting patiently. I have a proposition for you, Maya Chen. Not just about the job. I'm listening. He turned back to face me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Work for me. Design for Casa Moretti. Let me protect you while you build something real. Something that's yours. And when this is over, when the Calabrese threat is eliminated and you're safe, you walk away. With money, with connections, with a collection that will open every door in fashion. That's it? Just work and walk away? That's it. He moved closer, and I found myself standing to meet him. Unless you want more. The air between us felt electric, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the pulse beating at his throat, could remember with perfect clarity how his skin had felt under my hands as I'd stitched him back together. I don't want more, I said, but my voice betrayed me, coming out breathless. Liar. He said it softly, almost affectionately. You're many things, Maya, but you're a terrible liar. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Every instinct told me to step back, to put distance between myself and this dangerous man who dealt in violence and blood. I leaned into his touch instead. This is insane, I whispered. You're a criminal. I'm a seamstress. This whole situation is insane, he agreed. Impossible. Dangerous. His thumb brushed over my lower lip. And yet here we are. Here we are, I echoed. For a suspended moment, neither of us moved. Then, my phone shattered the silence, buzzing insistently on the work table. I stepped back, breaking the spell. The screen showed the nursing home's number. I need to take this, I said, my voice shaky. Dante nodded, moving away to give me privacy. I answered, listened to the nurse explain that my grandmother had had another episode, that they needed to discuss increased care requirements, that the costs would be going up significantly. When I ended the call, I found Dante watching me with those two knowing eyes. How much? He asked quietly. That's not how much, Maya, I told him. Watched something flicker in his expression that might have been anger or might have been understanding. The salary at Casa Moretti will cover it. He picked up the contract, held it out to me. Plus your rent, plus enough to actually live on instead of just survive. All you have to do is say yes. I looked at the contract, at my half-finished designs on the wall, at the strip of white silk in my sewing box, stained with his blood and my broken dreams, at the man standing in my apartment offering me everything I'd wanted and everything I feared in equal measure. One condition, I heard myself say. Name it. No more lies. No more protection I don't know about. No more men watching my building without my knowledge. I met his eyes directly. If I'm going to be part of your world, even temporarily, I need to know the truth, all of it. Something like respect flickered across his face. Agreed. No more lies. And the Calabrese family? What happens when they find out I'm working for you? They won't. As far as anyone outside my inner circle knows, you're just a designer I hired through normal channels. Talented, yes. Connected to me, no. He paused. Unless they get close enough to see the stitches. My hand went unconsciously to my sewing box, to the silk I'd used on his shoulder. They're distinctive, he continued. White silk, specific pattern. Anyone who saw them would know I was treated by someone with sewing skills, not medical training. It's a trail they could follow. So I'm bait. The realization settled over me like a weight. You're using me as bait. No. He moved quickly, catching my hands in his. No, Maya. You're not bait. You're under my protection. There's a difference. Is there? His grip tightened. Yes. Bait is expendable. You're not. The conviction in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it terrified me, because it meant something to him. I meant something to him, and that was more dangerous than any threat from the Calabrese family. I need time to think, I said, pulling my hands free. It's too much. Too fast. You have until morning. He pulled out a business card different from the one Marco had given me and set it on my work table. Call this number when you decide. A car will be here within 10 minutes to take you to Casa Moretti. And if I say no? A shadow crossed his face. Then I'll have my men watch your building anyway. I'll make sure the nursing home gets anonymous donations to cover your grandmother's care. I'll ensure you're protected whether you accept it or not. That's not fair. No, he agreed quietly, but it's all I can offer. I won't force you into my world, Maya, but I won't leave you vulnerable to my enemies either. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at me. For what it's worth, I think you should say yes. Not because of the money or the protection, but because you deserve to see what you can create when someone gives you the resources to dream. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with a contract, a business card, and a decision that would change everything. I moved to the window, watching him emerge from my building and slide into the black car. It pulled away smoothly, disappearing into the evening traffic. The second car, the one that had been there all day, remained. I looked at the contract again. At the salary that would save my grandmother, at the studio space that would let me actually create, at the Fashion Week opportunity that designers spent their whole careers chasing. Then I looked at the strip of white silk, at my half-finished wedding dress draped over the mannequin in the corner, at the life I'd been living in the shadow of grief and loss. David would have told me to run, would have reminded me that danger and money and opportunity don't mix well, would have been logical and careful and right, but David was dead, and I was so tired of being careful. I picked up my phone and called the nursing home back, told them I'd be by tomorrow to discuss the increased care plan, that money wouldn't be an issue. The lie came easily, or maybe it wasn't a lie at all. Maybe, in some twisted way, this was the truth I'd been avoiding since David died, that the safe path, the careful path, the path that kept me small and scared and surviving, maybe that path was its own kind of death. I looked at Dante's business card, at the phone number that would connect me to a world of violence and beauty and impossible choices. Then I picked up the white silk strip, feeling the dried blood rough against my fingers, remembering the way his skin had felt under my hands as I'd stitched life back into damaged flesh. I'd saved him with fragments of my broken dreams. Maybe he could help me build new ones. The thought was terrifying. It was also the most alive I'd felt in 18 months. I set the silk down carefully and picked up the contract, reading through it properly this time. The terms were generous, too generous. The creative control was absolute. The timeline was insane. It was perfect. It was impossible. It was mine if I wanted it. Outside, the black car kept its vigil. Inside, I made my choice. Not because I had to. Because somewhere between stitching a stranger's wounds and watching him walk away, I'd remembered what it felt like to want something, to want someone. And God help me, but I was tired of saying no to wanting. I picked up my phone and dialed the number on Dante's card. He answered on the first ring. I have one more condition, I said before he could speak. Name it. The white silk, the piece I used to stitch you. I took a breath. I want to see the stitches when they come out. I want to see what I created. Silence on the other end. Then so soft I almost missed it. They're not coming out. What? I'm keeping them. The scars, the silk, all of it. His voice was rough. You marked me, Maya. I'm keeping the marks. Something in my chest tightened, shifted, cracked open. That's insane. They'll get infected. Dr. Vega says they're healing clean. Says the silk is biocompatible, whatever that means. Says I can keep them if I want. A pause. I want. Why? Because you saved me with a wedding dress you'll never wear. Because in all my years of violence and blood and calculated risks, no one has ever given me a piece of their broken dreams. His voice dropped. Because I want to remember. Every time I look in the mirror, every time I move wrong and feel the pull, I want to remember that someone good exists in my dark world. Tears burned behind my eyes. I blinked them back, angry at myself for being affected, for letting this dangerous man under my skin with pretty words and romantic gestures. When do I start? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. The car will be outside your building at 8:30. And the Calabrese family? Let me worry about them. You focus on creating something beautiful. Dante. Yes? I wanted to say so many things. That I was terrified. That this felt like jumping off a cliff. That I couldn't afford to lose anyone else. Couldn't survive another person walking into my life just to leave it in tragedy. Don't make me regret this, I said instead. I'll try not to. A pause. Get some sleep, Maya. Tomorrow your life changes. He ended the call before I could respond. I stood at my window for a long time, watching the black car, watching my neighborhood settle into its evening rhythm, watching the life I'd known fade into the life I was about to step into. Somewhere in Midtown, Dante Moretti wore my wedding dress silk stitched into his skin like a claim, like a promise, like a prayer. And tomorrow, I would walk into his world and try to build something beautiful from the ruins of both our pasts. The thought terrified me. It also made me feel more alive than I had since David died. I looked at my wedding dress, the one I'd never finished, never worn, never needed, and wondered if Dante had been right. Maybe I would wear it again. Just not in any way I could have imagined 18 months ago. The car arrived at exactly 8:30 a.m. I'd been awake since 5, too nervous to sleep, cycling through my limited wardrobe trying to find something appropriate for a fashion house. Everything I owned was functional jeans and simple tops for working at my table. One decent dress for client meetings. Nothing that said designer. In the end, I settled on black jeans, a silk blouse I'd made myself, and my one good pair of boots. Simple, professional, not trying too hard. I hoped. Marco was driving, which somehow made me feel both safer and more anxious. He greeted me with a slight nod as I slid into the back seat. Miss Chen. Mr. Moretti asked me to tell you that he won't be at the facility today. Business elsewhere. Relief and disappointment weared in my chest. That's fine. I'm here to work, not anything else. A ghost of a smile touched Marco's lips. Of course. We drove through morning traffic, leaving Chinatown behind for Midtown's glass towers and luxury storefronts. Casa Moretti occupied the ground floor and basement of a sleek building on a tree-lined street that probably cost more per month in rent than I'd made in the past year. The exterior was understated elegant gold lettering on pristine windows, a single dress displayed like art in the front window. But through the glass, I could see the space opened up into something spectacular. Marco walked me to the entrance, held the door. Miss Valentina will show you around. She's the house manager. Inside was even more impressive than the photographs. Natural light flooded through floor-to-ceiling windows. Racks of sample garments lined one wall, organized by color and style with military precision. A cutting table dominated the center of the space, large enough to accommodate the most elaborate patterns. And beyond that, visible through an archway, I could see rows of sewing machines and what looked like a separate finishing studio. A woman emerged from an office at the back, moving toward me with the confident grace of someone comfortable in her own kingdom. She was perhaps 50, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. Miss Chen. Her accent was Italian, softened by years in America. I'm Valentina Rossi. Welcome to Casa Moretti. She extended her hand and I shook it, trying to match her firm grip. Thank you. This space is incredible. It should be. Mr. Moretti spared no expense. She began walking, gesturing for me to follow. I understand you'll be designing our Fashion Week collection. 8 weeks is an aggressive timeline. I know. I'm up for the challenge. Valentina glanced at me, her dark eyes assessing. We'll see. Our last designer, Cecilia, had 20 years of experience. She left rather suddenly to work for Versace. Mr. Moretti seems to think fresh blood will serve us better. The skepticism in her tone was barely concealed. I don't have 20 years of experience, I admitted, but I have vision. And I'm not afraid of hard work. Good, you'll need both. She showed me through the space, the cutting room, the sewing stations where a team of seamstresses worked on current projects, the finishing studio where details like beading and embroidery were added. You'll have access to all of this. Budget is essentially unlimited, Mr. Moretti wants pieces that will make the fashion world take notice. How many pieces? 12 to 15 for a full collection. Mix of day wear and evening wear. We'll need a cohesive theme, a narrative that ties everything together. 12 to 15 pieces in 8 weeks. It was insane. It was exactly what I dreamed of. I'll need to see the fabric suppliers, I said, my mind already racing. And I want to meet the seamstresses, understand their skill levels, what techniques they're comfortable with. Valentina's expression softened slightly. This way. She led me to a studio at the back of the facility that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with northern light. A drafting table sat in one corner, already stocked with supplies, pencils, markers, paper of various weights. A dress form stood in the center. And along one wall, bookshelves held fabric samples, lookbooks, and design references. "This is your space," Valentina said. "No one enters without your permission." I moved into the room slowly, touching the drafting table, the fabric samples, hardly daring to believe this was real. "The team will want to meet you," Valentina continued. "They're protective of Casa Moretti." Cecilia's departure was abrupt. "They're suspicious of rapid change." "I understand. Do you?" She studied me carefully. "This isn't just a fashion house, Miss Chen. It's a family. These women have worked here for years, some for decades. They'll test you. If you prove yourself, they'll be loyal beyond measure. If you fail." She let the sentence hang. "I won't fail. We'll see." Valentina moved toward the door. "I'll give you an hour to settle in. Then I'll introduce you to the team. After that, you're on your own." She left me alone in my new studio. I stood in the center of the space, slowly, turning, taking it all in. This was real. This was happening. In 8 weeks, I'd need to have a collection ready for Fashion Week. 12 to 15 pieces that would establish Casa Moretti and, by extension, me as serious contenders in the fashion world. No pressure. I moved to the drafting table, picking up a pencil, feeling its familiar weight. Then I flipped open a sketchbook, blank pages waiting to be filled, and began to draw. The design came easily, flowing from my pencil like it had been waiting years to emerge. A dress, evening wear, silk but structured, architectural, clean lines with unexpected details. And there, at the shoulder, a deliberate element that looked like stitching, like sutures, like scars made beautiful. I was so absorbed I didn't hear the door open. "You work fast." I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. Dante stood in the doorway, looking nothing like the wounded man from my apartment, or even the polished businessman from yesterday. He wore jeans and a dark Henley, casual but expensive, the fabric clinging to his frame in ways that suggested custom tailoring. His left arm still moved carefully, protecting the injury, but otherwise he looked healthy, strong, dangerous. "I thought you had business elsewhere." I managed. I lied. He moved into the room, closing the door behind him. "I wanted to see you here, make sure you actually showed up. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might change your mind, decide the risk wasn't worth the reward." He came to stand beside me, looking down at my sketch. "But you're here. Drawing. Working," I corrected. "This is work, not whatever you think this is. I think this is you doing what you were meant to do." His finger traced the shoulder detail on my sketch, the deliberate stitching element. This is what I saw in your apartment. The way you think about construction, about beauty in unexpected places." Heat flooded my cheeks. "It's just a preliminary sketch. Could be terrible once I actually try to construct it." "It won't be." He said it with absolute certainty, and something in his confidence made me stand straighter. "You can't know that. I know talent when I see it." His eyes met mine. "I knew it the moment you stitched me with your wedding dress. You create beautiful things from broken pieces. That's a gift. That's trauma response." A soft laugh. "Maybe, but it's still a gift." We stood close in the quiet studio, and I was suddenly aware of how intimate this felt him in my creative space, looking at my unfinished work, seeing the ideas I'd barely formed. It felt more vulnerable than having him in my apartment, more dangerous than stitching his wounds. "How's your shoulder?" I asked, needing to break the tension. "Healing clean. Dr. Vega checked it yesterday. Says you did remarkable work for someone with no medical training. I had a good teacher." I thought of David, of all the nights I'd watched him practice sutures on oranges and synthetic skin. "And I'm very good with my hands." The words came out more suggestive than I'd intended. Dante's eyes darkened. "Yes," he said softly. "You are." A knock on the door saved me from responding. Valentina's voice came through. "Miss Chen? The team is ready to meet you." I stepped back from Dante, suddenly aware of how close we'd been standing. I should go. Professional obligations and all. Of course. But he didn't move toward the door. Maya, before you go, there's something you should know. The serious tone made my stomach drop. What? My sister. Sophia. She works here. I remembered the woman from the photo Marco had shown me. You said she's your sister. She is. And she doesn't know about the Calabrese situation. His expression was carefully neutral. As far as she's concerned, you're just a talented designer I hired through normal channels. I need you to maintain that fiction. You're lying to your sister? I'm protecting her. An edge crept into his voice. Sophia is innocent as anyone in my family can be. She believes Casa Moretti is just a fashion house, nothing more. She doesn't know about the other businesses, the other arrangements. And you want me to help you maintain that lie. I want you to help me keep her safe. There's a difference. I studied his face, seeing the tension in his jaw, the shadows in his eyes. This mattered to him. Sophia mattered. Fine, I said. But if she asks direct questions, I won't lie to her face. She won't ask. She has no reason to suspect anything. Another knock, more insistent. Miss Chen? Coming, I called out. To Dante. You need to leave. Having you here when I meet the team will raise questions. There's a back exit. He moved toward a door I hadn't noticed, partially hidden behind the bookshelves. For when you need privacy, or an escape route. Of course there was an escape route. Because this wasn't just a fashion house. It was a front for money laundering. A piece of Dante's criminal empire. A beautiful facade hiding dangerous truths. And I'd just agreed to become part of it. Dante paused at the hidden door. Maya? Thank you for saying yes. For being here. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen if I can actually design a collection worth showing? I've seen enough. His eyes held mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. You're going to do something remarkable here. I know it. Then he was gone, slipping through the hidden door and disappearing into whatever secret passages this building held. I took a moment to compose myself, smoothing my blouse, checking my reflection in the darkened window. I looked nervous, excited, terrified. I looked alive. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door to find Valentina waiting with a group of women, 5 of them, ranging in age from early 20s to perhaps 60. They regarded me with the frank assessment of people who'd seen designers come and go, who knew their own worth and wouldn't be easily impressed. Ladies, Valentina said, her tone formal. This is Maya Chen. She'll be designing our Fashion Week collection. Maya, this is your team. The oldest woman stepped forward first. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. I'm Rosa. I've been with Casa Moretti since Mr. Moretti's grandfather ran the operation. I do finishing work, beading, embroidery, the details that separate good from exceptional. It's an honor, I said, meaning it. The next woman was perhaps 40, built solid, with capable hands scarred from years of work. Gianna, I handle construction. If you can design it, I can build it. The challenge in her tone was clear. I look forward to testing that, I replied. A younger woman, mid-20s with a streak of purple in her dark hair, grinned. I'm Lucia, pattern making and draping. Also, I make excellent coffee, which you'll need if you're serious about this 8-week timeline. I'm very serious. And I definitely need coffee. The last 2 introduced themselves, Teresa and Angelina, both skilled seamstresses with decades of experience between them. They were polite but reserved, clearly waiting to see if I'd earn their respect or flame out like I suspected many designers before me. I know I'm young, I said, addressing the elephant in the room. I know I don't have 20 years of experience like Cecilia, but I have vision, and I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm going to ask a lot of you over the next 8 weeks. Long hours, probably some late nights, definitely some challenging construction. How challenging? Gianna asked, arms crossed. I pulled out my sketchbook, showing them the dress I'd been working on. This is just a preliminary concept, but it's the kind of thing I'm thinking. Architectural lines, unexpected details, beauty in unconventional places, nothing ordinary, nothing safe. Rosa moved closer, studying the sketch with narrowed eyes, her gnarled finger traced, the shoulder detail. This stitching here, is it decorative or structural? Both. It's meant to look like sutures, like scars made beautiful. The whole collection will explore that theme, things that are broken but stronger for being repaired. The women exchanged glances. I couldn't read their expressions. Then Rosa smiled. Good. I'm tired of boring. Let's make something people will remember. The tension in the room broke. Gianna uncrossed her arms. Lucia's grin widened, and even Teresa and Angelina looked intrigued. All right, designer, Gianna said. Show us what you've got. We have 8 weeks to make magic happen. 7 weeks and 6 days, Lucia corrected. Lost a day already. Then we'd better get started. I turned to Valentina. I need to see everything in the fabric library, all of it, and I need access to your supplier contacts. If I'm going to pull this off, I need materials I can't normally afford. Budget is unlimited, Valentina reminded me. Mr. Moretti was very clear. Of course he was, because this wasn't just about fashion. It was about keeping me close, keeping me busy, keeping me under his protection while he dealt with the Calabrese family. But standing in that studio with my team around me, looking at the resources I'd only dreamed of, I decided I didn't care about his motives. For the first time in 18 months, I had purpose, direction, a reason to create instead of just mend. If Dante Moretti wanted to give me that gift, even wrapped in danger and deception, I'd take it. And I'd make something so beautiful he'd never forget it. Let's get to work, I said. And for the next 8 hours, I lost myself in the pure joy of creation. Sketching designs, draping fabric on dress forms, discussing construction techniques with Gianna, learning about the specialized skills each team member brought. Lunch came and went, barely noticed. Evening arrived without fanfare. By the time Valentina finally insisted I go home, I had preliminary sketches for all 15 pieces, a cohesive theme emerging, and the beginning of a bond with my team. Marco drove me home in comfortable silence. The black car fell in behind us, my ever-present protection that I was beginning to accept as normal. My apartment felt smaller after the spacious studio. Cramped, empty, like a placeholder for the real life I'd been living somewhere else. I heated up leftover takeout, ate mechanically while reviewing my sketches. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. How was your first day? I stared at it for a moment before responding. How did you get this number? I own a telecommunications company, among other things. Of course you do. A pause then. You didn't answer the question. I looked at my sketches, at the work spread across my table, at the exhaustion in my bones that felt satisfying instead of defeating. It was good. Really good. I'm glad. Another pause. I should have put the phone down, should have ended the conversation before it became something more than professional courtesy. Instead, I typed, "The team thinks I'm just a designer you hired. Your sister will too when I meet her. How long can we maintain that fiction? As long as necessary. And when it falls apart, when they realize I'm connected to your other world, then I'll protect them too." The simple certainty of it should have been reassuring. Instead, it reminded me of the danger lurking beneath this beautiful opportunity. Thank you, for today, for this chance. Thank you for taking it. Sleep well, Maya. I set the phone down and looked around my apartment, at the life I'd been living, at the wedding dress still draped over its mannequin, half finished, waiting. Tomorrow, I'd go back to Casa Moretti. I'd keep designing, keep creating, keep building something beautiful while Dante fought his war in the shadows. And maybe in the process, I'd figure out how to finish my own wedding dress. Not for David, for whoever I was becoming in Dante Moretti's dangerous, beautiful world. Fashion Week arrived like a storm. My collection, 15 pieces exploring scars made beautiful, hung backstage at the venue. Each garment featured deliberate stitching details, white silk sutures that caught light like precious metal. The team had worked miracles, and I'd barely slept in 2 weeks. Sophia found me backstage, her excitement palpable. "Maya, it's incredible. The buyers are already buzzing." But I couldn't focus. Dante had been distant for 3 days. Marco's updates were terse. Something was happening with the Calabrese family. The show started flawlessly. Models glided down the runway in my designs. The audience leaned forward, captivated. My finale piece, a wedding dress with visible white silk stitches along the shoulder, waited backstage. Then I saw them, men in the audience who didn't belong. Their eyes weren't on the runway. They were scanning, searching. For me. Marco materialized at my elbow. "We need to move you. Now." The finale, "Now, Miss Chen." But it was too late. One of the men stood, moving toward backstage. Others followed. Then Dante appeared, stepping directly into their path. His men flanked him, a wall of controlled violence in expensive suits. The Calabrese soldiers stopped. "Gentlemen," Dante's voice carried through the space, calm and absolute. "You're disrupting the show." The lead man, older, scarred, smiled coldly. "We're here for the Seamstress. She's under my protection. We know." "That's the point," the man gestured, and more soldiers appeared in the exits. "Too many. You give us the girl, we end this war." "Simple trade," Sophia gasped beside me, finally understanding. Dante's eyes found mine across the space. In them, I saw apology, determination, and something deeper. "No trade," he said simply. Chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked through the venue, screaming, people running. My team pushed Sophia and me toward the back exit, but I broke free, running toward the stage. The finale. Dress. My wedding dress. I grabbed it, and in that moment Dante reached me. Blood bloomed on his shirt. He'd been hit, protecting me again. "Maya, what are you? You said I'd wear it again." I pressed fabric against his wound, my wedding dress, stopping his blood for the second time. "You said for you." His hand covered mine. I meant it. Police sirens wailed outside. The Calabrese men scattered. It was over. The studio apartment was gone, replaced by a loft in Dante's building. Not his penthouse. I'd insisted on my own space, but close enough. My label had launched. Buyers from Paris, Milan, Tokyo wanted meetings, but tonight was about something else. I stood before the mirror in my bedroom, wearing the wedding dress. The one I'd stitched Dante with. The one that had stopped his blood twice. The one I'd finally finished. It was perfect. A knock. Dante entered, stopping when he saw me. "You're wearing it," he breathed. "I told you I would." I touched the shoulder seam where his blood had stained it. I'd left the stain, incorporated it into the design. "For you." He crossed to me, pulled me close despite his healing wound. "The Calabrese family is finished. The police have enough evidence to put them away forever. You're safe now. I know. You could leave. Start fresh somewhere without my world touching yours." I looked at his shoulder, where white silk stitches still marked his skin scars he'd refused to remove. "I could," I agreed, "but I won't." "Why?" "Because you taught me something." I traced the stitches through his shirt. "That broken things can be remade into something stronger. That scars can be beautiful. That sometimes the most dangerous choice is the one that makes you feel alive." His kiss was gentle, reverent. "Marry me. Really marry me. Is that a proposal or an order?" "With you, always a proposal." I smiled against his lips. "Then yes, but I'm keeping my studio at Casa Moretti. I'd expect nothing less." Outside, the city glittered. Inside, a seamstress and a criminal built something beautiful from their scars. I wore my wedding dress, for him, just like he'd promised. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Chen, a struggling seamstress, saves wounded mafia underboss Dante Moretti by stitching his gunshot wound with silk from her unfinished wedding dress. Both haunted by dead fiancés, they form an unexpected bond. Dante offers Maya a design position at his fashion house, Casa Moretti, protecting her from the rival Calabrese family hunting him. As Maya creates a Fashion Week collection themed around beautiful scars, their relationship deepens. When the Calabrese attack during her show, Dante protects Maya, getting shot again. She saves him with the same wedding dress. With enemies defeated, Maya and Dante marry, building a future from their shared trauma.